So welcome to the second Your Life, Your Choice host provider meeting. I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the land in which we meet today and the elders past and present. A bit's happened since the last meeting. All the issues that were discussed were fed into the Your Life, Your Choice team, and we've also had a meeting with them since then and talked through some of a smaller group of host providers talking through with the department some of those issues and possible solutions. So we've got some of the team in today. We've got Lynn Robertson and Leslie Moss and Belinda. And so they'll be doing a bit of an update around the work that's been going on, and we'll also have an opportunity. Lynn's happy to be talking through some of those issues as they're working through it. So either asking questions, or we'll have some time for question and answers at the end of that as well. Then afterwards, one of the things that came out of that, we had quite a lot of requests after the first one was, and some people being brand new to becoming a host provider, was it would be really good to spend some time listening to some positive stories as well. So we've chosen 3 people, some who've been doing this sort of work for a long time, some are a bit new to it. So we've got Paul Cocaine from Mamre, we've got Tracy Johnston from Alara in Ipswich, and we've also got Tracy Alexander from Gladstone, so who's also going to talk around the regional network that they've set up in central Queensland. So thank you for all coming today. I think that's all I need to cover off for this morning, and I'll hand you over to Lynn.
Good morning, I'm Lynn Robertson and Leslie Moss and Belinda, and they'll add some things to my presentation discussion. We just wanted to give you a bit of an update on some things happening, but where we wanted to start was probably with NDS. And just really, this is really nothing formal, just what we're hearing that I thought might be of use. Obviously self-direction, and this came up at the co-production working group that we had around the review of the framework, which I'll talk to you a little bit more about, is self-direction and the discussion around what is self-direction, and probably the understanding of self-direction. And obviously, as everyone's aware, under NDIS, everyone self-directs, and the way that they do that differs. So they may do it through the agency and going direct to services, they may do it through a plan management, and they may do it through what we call direct payments, which they call self-managed. Plan management, and what I've put up next to is funds management. What I'm hearing, and again it's hearing, I'm not involved in the formal meeting, so it's stuff that I hear. I'm hearing that at present plan management isn't being used a lot. So as people know, under an NDIS, people can purchase their plan items, each of their service types, if we use our language, from in a whole range of different ways and from a whole range of services. They may use a plan manager to help them purchase one of those services only, and they might have 5 other things in their plan. I'm hearing that there may be a need for more things around assistance in coordinating and managing life stages, transitions and supports. I've used that because that's the title they use in terms of their catalogue or their list of services. And that's more about the coordination of service rather than the plan management. And the plan management is the funds, and then the coordination is something that's purchased separately. So there is difference and there is variation. Remember, we developed a host provider, Your Life, Your Choice framework was developed before the NDIS, actually quite before the NDIS, and then launched with this new government. Reasonable and necessary. The other thing that I've been hearing and having some discussions around is additional information around thinking about reasonable and necessary, because what I hear is, again, people using the term reasonable and necessary and having sort of the criteria and some questions, people still say, well, is that in or out? You know, so that ongoing discussion. Something that I've heard more recently, there's been a discussion about thinking about that reasonable and necessary, and when you're working through the issue, if it is reasonable and necessary, looking at disability and disadvantage. And so thinking about if a person's looking for a certain to purchase a certain type of support, working through, is it reasonable and necessary, is it around disability disadvantage? So there's been a bit of a discussion about that, trying to look at, is it a need due to disability, is it a need due to disadvantage? Move on to a little bit of an update. We have around 750 people have chosen to self-direct under Your Life, Your Choice. Small number, 21 people are using direct payments through the department. So that's a really small part, and that's been a slow rollout, and we'll continue to work with regions and individuals around direct payments where they seek to do that. We have put on the website that we're looking at the EOI process. So what we're doing at the moment is just having a look at the numbers of providers, the numbers of people, the geographical spread, the choice that people have across those areas, to inform us really, I suppose, about the ongoing direction of host providers. We're looking at reviewing that process. So we're needing that information to then feed up and get some direction about longer term sort of EOI processes and increasing in host providers. The review of the framework. And one of the purposes of the review, the purpose was obviously it's been a year and nearly 2 years since the framework was launched. It was developed, like I said before, NDIS, and it doesn't reflect the changes in terms of direct payments. It doesn't reflect NDIS in it. It doesn't reflect a lot of the terminology and whatever that has happened since that time. So the purpose was to update it. At the co-production working group, we talked about a couple of things. There were a couple of sort of key pieces. Is what is self-direction, and looking at the definition, looking at that spectrum, looking at the principles, and then about the framework, and what is it about the framework that's useful and not so useful, what should we be changing. Our plan with this is to, because I think there were sort of such varying views, is to write up the feedback and present the options to obviously either the DG or the Minister. The Minister may have a view about how she wants to change the framework if she wants, or amend the framework. So we'll be doing that in the next month as well. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Leslie. There were two other things that were raised in our small group discussion in January. Adult guardian and restricted practices, and we just wanted to give you a bit of an update on those things.
At the co-production meeting, people talked about the relationship that the Office of the Adult Guardian and the Public Trust has, and what their responsibilities are in relation to Your Life, Your Choice, and people making a decision to self-direct their supports. So we've met with the Office of the Adult Guardian and the Public Trust the public trustee a number of times, and been talking to them about the concepts of Your Life, Your Choice, and right back to when we were planning about rolling it out. So we've had lots of those meetings with them. One of the things that our regional officers and some host providers have been telling us is that the adult guardian, some of them are reluctant to engage with making decisions about what sort of services, etc., a person will purchase. So we've been thinking about it, and what we want to talk to them about is we think that maybe we've expected them to bring their decision making down a bit too low, because the adult guardian always makes decisions about what services people will get. When they make that decision at, will they get their services from ABC, and they sign off that can be the service provider. So we want to engage with them, take a step back and say, all right, what's your role for usual service provision for a person with disability or their family? What's different about Your Life, Your Choice, and are there any differences? because to start with, the host providers, for example, are still disability services, certified providers. So to identify what some of the differences are and then talk to them about what we might do to try and resolve that, and then to have a communication with our regional officers and be talking to host providers who experience people who have the Office of the Adult Guardian or the Public Trust as their administrator.
Belinda, the other issue was restrictive practices.
So I guess that's another key area that we're hearing that people are having challenges with. What you may or may not know, at the moment there's a legislative review occurring around restrictive practices, and particularly there is a bit of a focus around your life, your choice. Some of the issues clearly for host providers are really that clarity around what your role is, and the intention of that review is to target, clarifying that role. We are working at the moment on a position statement around restrictive practices, and as I'm sure you can imagine that that's quite complex. There's a range of different views about the direction that we should or shouldn't take around restrictive practices, and we're trying to do that at the same time that those legislative review is occurring. So I guess what I can do is give you what is the sense of that direction at this point in time, knowing that clearly there hasn't been a decision made around that. Certainly I guess the intention of Your Life, Your Choice wasn't to create a situation where there was no protection under the Act, I guess, for people with disabilities. So safeguards for people are a priority, as well as, trying to give maximum choice and control for people. So they're sort of the two highest order priorities that we're trying to achieve.
It appears that there's a gap within departmental processes, because we wouldn't have scenarios where people can't engage with the Office of the Adult Guardian if the Adult Guardian had been part of the decision about the person self-directing or self-managing.
Yes, that's
And we're seeing, our experience is that there is inconsistency in regional responses, and there is not the level of information that a host provider is receiving. Is often not until after somebody's signed it off on a dotted line.
That's right.
And we find this information. Now, aside from poor quality outcomes for an individual who might not, as people have alluded to, have anything other than paid support around them, it concretes a conflict of interest, because you as a host provider are then supposed to be advocating for the person, and most of the host providers are actually arms of service delivery agencies. So I cast no aspersions on ourselves or on my colleagues, but there's a motivator there for us to generate business. We need those independent decisions.
I've even found that our system, for example, doesn't effectively record in one place whether somebody has an adult guardian. So it's, lots of times it's recorded in notes, and it's not. So it's hard to get information. So we're going to talk to the adult guardian about how do we actually identify people, and what should we be doing first. Should we be contacting the adult guardian first and saying, John Smith has you as the Office of the Adult Guardian, he meets our criteria for self-directed support, do you give approval for him to receive a letter and start to explore that? And then we balance that with the rights of the person, how much, that we go to the person first and tell them. So they're the exact things that we're trying to work through so that we can give our regional officers clear advice. So
when people come to you, you'll be clearer about their position.
So that's our responsibility to do that work centrally, so that we can give regional officers clear direction. We're often asked about, from a regional office, look, we've got this particular family, they've got complex needs, they're never happy with their services, they want to change them often, they're not particularly stable, so we wonder about whether they should be self-directing their supports. They're tricky things to say, because sometimes people's dissatisfaction with the service system adds to the complexities of them being not happy and wanting to change. And the research shows that if people have greater choice and control, then people feel, a better quality of services. So we don't. Our criteria at the moment is individualised recurrent funding, and that the person doesn't get any crisis funding on top of that. And then regional officers go through a process with the person about looking at what are your restrictive practices, what are those other sort of risks. So under the NDIA, because they come down a bit lower into people's plan items, so they go down per item. So this diagram, that shows how that might work for a person. So a person who's identified, for example, say of having risk with their personal care. So when they're doing the planning with that person and the person's making decisions about how they want to manage their supports and have their supports paid for, a person could have the three areas. So the agency might say, look, because there's an identified risk for you for this plan item for personal care, the agency is going to manage the payment of your personal care. And when you have the agency manage a component of your plan, they need to buy that plan item from a registered provider. But there might be other components of the person's supports that don't require that. So a person might say, well, look, I want to have a plan manager manage the payment of these supports for me, and I want to manage a component of those. So under the NDIA, much more opportunity to look in regional. So we're trying to think about how we might do that, but our system is quite different to that. So we're looking for opportunities that we can meet the balance of providing people with safeguards, but providing people with opportunity for choice and control as well, and how we might integrate that into our already established system.
The other issue that I think people raised at the small working group, but we have had some feedback on since, is timeframes for movement, or timeframes for people moving to Your Life, Your Choice. We've been made aware that in some instances people are being told they need to provide the department with their host provider within a 24-hour turnaround. Because centrally sometimes we don't hear these things. We've heard that resonate, and let's be very clear, that is not the department rule. That is not our Your Life, Your Choice rule. That has been communicated. I communicated that to regional directors on Monday. We have Paul Gravel, our exec director, has also sent out a communique to the regions, the REDs, the regional executive directors, the regional directors, and for all the staff, that is not a process. So we will try and get that in place, because that's probably that is not okay if people are feeling their money is not going to happen if they're not going to move. And obviously everyone tells me here that I meet with and talk with for the best outcomes of the people to explore, to think, to work through, to discuss, to plan. So please keep feeding back to the regional office and the regional staff that you have contact with that's not a position you've been advised, that's not a position, and we'll keep working on this, so we'll try and turn that around so people have time to plan, time to think through.
So the peer support sessions, and that's on our last slide. The peer support sessions are about to start. They start on the first one rolls out in Central Queensland, I think, on the 19th. We're just confirming dates with our regional officer. They've been negotiating individually with Julie Simpson, so we'll confirm dates and work out where and how we put those up. We went through quite a process to think about who it is that we invite to attend those sessions, and we started off with talking to regional officers about who is it that you would invite, and it became apparent that there wasn't a consistent approach across all of the regions about who they thought could benefit from it. So in discussion with regional directors, etc., what we decided was that the approach was that we would take is that anybody who's got individualised funding, anybody who's got recurrent funding, who excludes people in block funded arrangements, that we will invite those people to attend the information sessions. So at this stage our approach is that throughout Queensland we'll be inviting about 6,500 people.
heaven forbid if they all want to come. But the focus of those sessions really is for people who are self-directing or who are seriously considering self-directing, because it's about learning a little bit more about self-direction, but about getting networks within the community so that people can support each other. They're different from the information sessions that my team delivered throughout Queensland, which is learning about what is self-direction and what is your life, your choice.
Since the meeting in January, we've sat down, we've developed up a number of options of which have risks for each of our areas, and we're just working through those now. We hope to have some clear positions on both the NMDS reporting and the service type form within the next couple of weeks. Obviously it'll be a keeping on working in progress, but I suppose I want to say it has been useful coming together and hearing how it works on the ground and some of the issues, and we are trying to work through them, and we will come back to you with at least some movement, if not needing to keep moving. So happy to keep working through. Please just bear with us for a few more weeks post these options that we've tried to be as creative as possible without breaking the system, but address some of the issues that people are raising. So we will come back to you on the reporting, both the NMDS service type and the financial sort of matching and reporting in the next few weeks.
So the business, under the sector readiness, the business development package is available and is online on the Clearinghouse, and on the Clearinghouse as well is the accredited and the non-accredited training that's available, so people should go to the Clearinghouse and have a look. Staffing Options is doing the resource development, and they're putting stuff up on the Clearinghouse as well, so that you'll only have one place to go to, so you should look at that and send people with disability to have a look at that as well. And the peer support, we'll look at, I haven't thought about how we're going to put the sessions up, but I'll have some thinking about that. But the regional officers are working with Julie Simpson, so those sessions will start being available throughout Queensland. So she'll run 35 of those sessions, so about 5 in every disability services region.
One of the things I talked about at the co-production actually was talking with someone, one of the host providers, and we may actually send you out the dates to the host providers through our host provider network email, because I just think that for host providers who have people who are already self-directing under Your Life, Your Choice and want to be part of that peer support, setting up a peer network in their region. I know some host providers talked to me about that's what they were doing anyway, but there were some areas where only a few people were self-directing, so that would be really useful for host providers to link people in who are already self-directing, who might benefit from the peer support network.
Thanks, Lynn. And from NDS's perspective, we'd like to thank Belinda and Lynn and Leslie for coming along. They've been really open as far as being able to talk about some of the issues that came up at the last one in November, and we're very happy to come along to the small focus group where we had some host providers along fleshing through some of those issues that you've been talking about, and knowing that we are in a position of transition, and they've been great at being able to listen to and talk through some of those difficulties around how that system's changed. So thank you very much, and I appreciate you guys for coming along, and thank you for the invitation. That if anybody has anything that they want to feed into the review, then you've got that couple of weeks to do that, to provide that feedback to you. So I'd like to welcome a couple of brave people that accepted my invitation only yesterday for one of them. Had quite a couple of phone calls actually around, it would be really good to hear some people in the room who were really new to in the space of being a host provider, and then try and tackle what some of the issues are and work through how we can make improvements. But what they wanted to hear was, what are some of the positive things that are happening at the moment, or what are some of the barriers they've come against and how have they sort of overcome them, to ensure that people out there are having good outcomes. So we invited Tracy along from Gladstone, specifically also to talk around what they did in their region. So some of the host providers who sort of didn't even know who the other host providers were in that region, and a plan of how they could get to know each other and work together better. So I'll let Tracy talk to that a little bit.
Hi, I'm Tracy and I'm from Gladstone Community Linking Agency, obviously in Gladstone. We're a medium NGO in Gladstone. Traditionally our area is Gladstone. We have gone a little bit south and a little bit north now, but don't do anything in Rockhampton. So it's not our niche market, it's not our core business. We don't plan to be providing services outside of our service area. So however, for host provision that we do, we were asked to tender in the first round as a host provider, so we have been registered from day dot. So one of the things that we did in our area was through Angela, the NDS rep that we have up there, we were able to put together just a little bit of it's a very informal network meeting with other registered host providers. Some of the benefits that I can talk for myself, I guess, that we've seen is we do get together bi-monthly or once a quarter. It was something that a few of us got together and from a couple of the NDS workshops up there, we had a little pool of us and we were bouncing stuff off each other, and our region, if you don't know Central Queensland, it's a little bit different to the other regions. So DS is a little bit different as well. So yeah, it was an opportunity to bounce things off each other. We had a commercial confidence in that meeting, so I guess in Central Queensland it's a bit different to Metropolitan. We're not competing against each other in the same town and things like that, so we have a little bit of an advantage with that. For us in Gladstone, some of the benefits were we were getting a lot of inquiries from Rockhampton and from regional in our area. So we have people from Theodore, like remote areas that I know nothing about, to be honest. We were very much in a bit of a cocoon in Gladstone. You could say that we've had a monopoly on our niche market in Gladstone for a while, so we hadn't had a need to find out what else was out there and who else was out there. So for us to be a good host provider and to be able to provide those families with information about what was available, and then for our case manager to be able to work with those families to set up services, we needed to find out what other services were out there. We needed to find out who could do what. We needed to set up collaboration contracts with other service providers. So we had we had been asked to be host providers for people, say, that live in Rockhampton. As I said, that's not what we do. We don't deliver services in Rockhampton. We don't intend to deliver services in Rockhampton, but they would be asking us to set up their services in Rockhampton. So to do that, we needed to have some knowledge, and we had basic stuff, but nothing where we were able to help those families to set up their services in Rockhampton. So it's meant we've been able to collaborate with people up there. It's made it a whole lot easier for brokerage agreements, for case management agreements, to help those families. We're able to direct them to services that we know what they're doing, we know what their services are on the ground. We've got feedback from that. We've been able to share some of our business strategies. We've been able to share some of our tools. We're fortunate our organisation has a very robust web-based management system for service users and staff, so we've been able to share that with some other services that didn't have that. Some of those services were still operating on spreadsheets, so you can appreciate moving forward that's really, really hard and inefficient. So we were able to share that, and they didn't have to go and spend all the money developing it. That we were able, they were able to buy a licence off us and things like that. So it has meant that we've been able to build excellent collaboration business partners. Not people that are, our direct competitors, and if they started to come into our area, we might not be so friendly, but definitely in our situation, in our region, it has worked. So, and just the information sharing, so we've been a host provider now for 8 months, nowhere near like MEMRE, but have, had those peaks and lows. So, and definitely being able to share the different information coming out of DS, and all the trying to wade through the information so that everyone was getting the same information. So, and it's a learning curve, definitely. And we had a discussion yesterday about what is self-directed, and a lot of our families, we're still holding their hand. Don't get us wrong. So, but they're learning with us, and we're learning with them.
Okay, so I'm Paul. I'm a team leader at MEMRE Family Support on the south side of Mount Gravatt. So you didn't get the manager of Family Support or the director, you got me. Just to run through MEMRE a bit. We've been an organisation for over 30 years now. We do in-home family support one-on-one. We don't do respite houses or supported accommodation or anything like that. So our core work is between 0 and 18, but as long as the person stays within the family home after 18, we continue supports. And if they move out, then we transition to another organisation. So we put a bit of a project together for 6 months between July and December 2012, and we took on about 10 families that wanted to self-direct. And we did a bit of putting policies together and all that sort of thing. The project finished, we kept those 10 families on. We now have about 35 families that are sitting with an administration officer within MAMRE who provides service to those families on an accountability level and making sure paperwork and all that sort of stuff is actually signed off on. Now, we've just taken on, since December, I think we took on about 10 new packages for people who had support for school leavers or individual packages that they wanted. We've even been dealing outside of our geographical area, which is a first from MAMRE. We have very strict boundaries within Brisbane metropolitan only, pretty much. But we're actually looking at, for sustainability reasons and going into the future, whether that will remain. So policies have been looked at for that as well. There's been a number of families that have come on board and taken to self-direction very, very well. They've got it around the accountability, the financials, the planning, and all that sort of stuff. We have had our issues as far as taking on a family. They were with us for almost 12 months before we turned around and said, no, we think you need a key worker for a while to learn how to self-manage. They were getting themselves into a bigger and bigger hole. There wasn't enough planning done at the very beginning. So these are some of the learnings that we've come across. Just to give you a bit of an overview, we're one of the first service providers came on board with Your Life, Your Choice as well. And our rates and everything are on the DS website with Your Life, Your Choice, and so you can have a look at those. As I said, we've taken on about 10 families, but what we've kind of learnt from that family that came on board, was with us for about a year and kind of slid backwards. We've decided that we offer, as you were just talking about, coordination when they first set up, and we're suggesting about 5 hours to do planning, learn the family support systems, the accountability, the financials, visioning and all planning and all that sort of thing. So we say between 5 and 10 hours, and the rate for that, we have a significant rate for that. That covers a key worker working with that family for that time. So it's a user pay system, basically. We found that it's working a lot better this way. We've had some families that have come to us, decided that they want MAMRE to be the provider, but their funding's not starting for a couple of months. Now, I know we're not getting paid for it at the moment, but it's actually given us that time to work with the family to get them on board before they even start looking at the funding. So it's actually become a really strong point that we're looking at. We had some families come on in December. Their packages weren't starting until 1st of March or some are 1st of April. So we've been working with them with those hours to get the planning done, to get paperwork done, to get them on board, make sure they're up and running, make sure they know what they're looking at. Families choose the host provider, and they come to you and go, yep, I've got this money. You may be talking to a person from DS around the support linkers and stuff, but there's no actual planning being done. They've been approved for services and that sort of thing. And that's where some of the struggle that we've found has been. There's been no real plan put in place around what the services would look like. And that's why we're putting that 5 hours. It's not mandatory, it depends on the family, but we suggest that to the families to make sure that they're in the right space to succeed.
So my name's Tracy, I'm from Alara, Queensland and Ipswich. We currently assist 26 individuals and families to self-direct their funding, and that's across the spectrum. So that's assisting them to purchase supports on their behalf, but also advancing them funds so they may make their own purchases and employ their own staff. So this particular story is about a family that approached me. At this point they hadn't been offered Your Life, Your Choice. They wanted to come in for a chat and talk about what options were open for them as they were dissatisfied with their current service provider. They had done all the right things. They'd approached the department about concerns about the service provision. They'd also made complaints about the service provider to the provider themselves, but were very dissatisfied with the results that they got back. Eventually, with enough kicking and screaming, the family were offered Your Life, Your Choice and able to self-direct their package. That package then came over to us as host provider, and I worked with the family quite intensively to basically set up their own business. So we went about resourcing information, going to the ATO, going to Fair Work, looking at small business principles and pay-as-you-go through the tax department. It took about probably 3 months to get that up and running, and that was good timing because that's when basically the funds hit the bank and we could start rolling. Since then, the family have seen a huge change in the young individual. She is now a lot more positive within the home. She was actually involved in the recruitment of the staff, so she actually had a say about who she wanted to work in the house and whether she was happy with them. This has meant that she's a lot more receptive to the service provision that's in the home. Previously with her, the service beforehand, let's just say it got to a point where she was non-receptive to any direction that was given to her. Would you be happy to clean the kitchen? No. And they wouldn't assist. If she said no, the service didn't happen. If family members came over to the house to say hello, just to drop in for 5 to 10 minutes, that support worker had to leave. They were not allowed to provide service within the home if she had family members in the home. Of course, now that plan has completely changed. There is a lot more fluidity in the house. Behaviours have decreased. Her health has actually improved. And, for a struggling diabetic, struggles to maintain that. There has been no problems within the last 6 months in regards to any health, any concerns about her behaviours, and we've seen that provision of service continue on. Yes, the family are constantly reviewing it, and the individual is actually, she assists with the appraisal of staff, I suppose you can say. Every month the staff all sit down and she provides feedback into how it's going, what she'd like to see improved, and they actually apply that into their plan of service. So she's helping to write her own support plan as she goes. And this is something that's very new to her. She's absolutely loving the control that she has in her home, and actually being able to see the value that puts back in the staff as well, because since hiring those staff, they have all stayed in the home. So retention of staff is not an issue because they can see the reward of what they're providing to her, and have actually seen the change in her personality, have seen the change in her health, and seen that she is actually now coming up with her own goals. She's actually setting her own goals and achieving those, and actually sees the reward herself, rather than a service provider saying, well, these are the goals that we've set, you've achieved those goals, now let's look at something else. So that has been a real positive outcome for the family, and hopefully it'll continue to improve.
I'd just like to thank Tracy and Paul for coming along. And as I said, they're not putting themselves up there as experts, but as host providers, really thank you all for being open and honest and sharing through the process that you're going through. So thank you very much, and we'll see you in a couple of months' time.